everyone. I'm Jade with Hive Nation. Hive Nation is an SAP marketplace built for consultants by consultants. We're here to help every independent SAP consultant like yourself to not only find your next project, but to also help you to grow your income, your skills, and your network. On this show, we bring on the world's experts to discuss everything from how to implement the latest trends in SAP and technology into your everyday operations, to helping you take your career in SAP to the next level. Check us out and join today at hivenation.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode on Hive Nation. Today, we're joined with Ed Kelly, one of the board members of Hive Nation. He's also the president and owner of Employment Contractor Services. ECS is a contingent staffing management and back office services company to the staffing industry. He's been running ECS since the turn of the millennium. So thank you, Ed, so much for joining us today. And today we have a super important topic, especially in terms of where companies are moving in the last few years. You know, even just 2020, we had a very big law come out in California, and I'm so happy that we have your expertise to talk about the changing landscape on how consultants and independent contractors are working with companies. So in today's show, we talk about why every SAP consultant needs to start their own business. So first off, there's a lot of security in staying with a company. Why should SAP consultants venture off and become independent?
Sure, and thanks for the introduction, Jade. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a really big topic, and I'm happy to walk you through everything and for the benefit of our members. I'll start with the issue of, job security. And I can tell you that in the modern economy, in the private sector, job security is largely become a myth. Unless you're working for a government agency or as a tenured teacher or a university professor, there are few, if any, guarantees of long-term employment in any company.
So long gone are the days of a 40-year job history.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the way that the economy has evolved. And, Hive Nation was created to respond to those changes and to enhance SAP consultants' tools in light of those changes. So just a little bit of history. If we go back about 40 years to about 1980, most large companies thought of each member of their workforce as sort of a long-term investment. Right. And you generally stayed with your employer for years or even decades, and you received a fairly high wage as your career grew within the company. And very often you received a pension when you retired. And those days are over, unfortunately. Today, companies do not look at their workforce in the same way. Modern workers are expected to be highly specialized in their particular field of expertise. And, to get a product or service to market, a company is no longer looking for that permanent employee. They're seeking temporary use of the skills of the best and who make their contribution to the company and then move on to the next project with another company.
Especially in the tech industry, and I know even as an employee, people are looking for the bigger, better, more exciting company to work for, and with tech companies constantly popping up, there seems to be a new one to join every couple of years.
Well, that's very true, and it's the beneficiaries of this change in the economy are undoubtedly skilled IT workers in particular. The semi-skilled and unskilled workers have had a lot of flat wage growth relative to inflation over the decades, but that's really not been the case for IT workers, and SAP people are definitely benefiting from that.
Today, you're talking about companies not looking at their workforce the same way. Could you delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, so this issue of job security really needs to change to one of job stability. And stability really means just having expertise and maintaining your skills on an ongoing basis so you can sell your services to any company at any time. And, this is the real main reason why I'm so excited to be part of Hive Nation. We founded Hive Nation with this reality in mind, and that is we view our job as providing our members the tools, not only to find opportunities, but to maintain them on an ongoing basis in an SAP-focused and collaborative environment.
So what would you say are the advantages of really starting their own business. And I know we talked a little bit about why they need to become independent, but could you expound on the advantages of doing so versus what they're losing at a company? So for example, at a company, you have the stability of health insurance, possibly a 401k, and going independent, you're possibly losing all of that, but what are you gaining, and why is it more important to become independent than to stay with a company?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. And, what I will say is that Hive Nation and its suite of products is designed to replicate that experience that you have as an employee of a company in an independent way. So I'd just like to break it down into three categories, and that's the job security issue, the employee benefits issue, and that collaboration issue. As we discussed, the job security issue is sort of a non-issue anymore. The employee benefit side, I just like to break that up into two pieces, and that is retirement products and other products like health insurance and related products to health insurance. So 401ks are really the standard in retirement products for employers now.
Right.
That's something that most employees will receive some 401k access as an employee of a company. That's something that Hive Nation has been sensitive to, and it's an issue we address through a resource who is a partner now to Hive Nation to help you set up a 401k within your own company. Okay.
So you're saying that's not something that they would have to lose, that you can actually set that up within your own company and continue to reap retirement benefits and not, because I know one thing with a lot of independent consultants, this is an area that not a whole lot of people really think about. They're getting the higher wages, but then they're not really saving the higher wages. Sometimes, without proper financial management, I've seen a lot of consultants just get the bigger house, the better car, and then have to work till they're in their 80s.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point. I think that 401k is a way to defer taxes over time, so you can save for retirement. And to not have that is, especially with highly paid and highly compensated workers, causes a big tax hit for you. And that's why we really wanted to focus on providing access to products that are equivalent to those that you would get as an employee of a company.
And so you said the same thing with something like health insurance, other type of benefits typically at a company as an employee?
Yeah, so health insurance and other related benefits, most people who are working as an employee of a consulting firm, as an SAP worker, whether they know it or not, they effectively pay for their own benefits in the form of lower compensation compared to an independent worker. I just did an update today at the U.S. Department of Labor site, which reports that employee benefits cost represent about 30% of an employee's total compensation. And
wow.
It's a lot. And you may not directly see those costs, so they appear to you to be free, but they're costs to your employer nonetheless. And so to account for that, you're paid less than you would otherwise receive if you were an independent professional.
Right, because they got to offset that somehow. They're not just giving that to you for free.
Exactly. So I just have a quick example, which hopefully will flush it out a little bit. A hypothetical SAP developer working as a W-2 employee of a consulting firm, for example, let's say they're paid $80 per hour, plus a benefits package that equates to about 30% of your overall compensation. Mm-hmm. As far as costs are concerned, the cost to your employer for your services is about $105 per hour. Okay. Mm-hmm. On an annual basis, that's about $220,000. Now, contrast that with being an independent business with Hive Nation. Your rate, when you set your rate, setting yourself up in the Hive Nation system, would likely be in the neighborhood of $120 per hour for that same work. And if we annualize that figure, that's about $250,000 of billings to your client through the Hive Nation. So rather than taking that paycheck for $80 per hour plus the paid for benefits, which you may or may not want all of, you now have personal control over $250,000. And with that money, you can purchase specific insurance products that are targeted to you, that are offered directly through the Hive Nation website.
Wow. So, something as small as going independent and using other services, you can still get the same benefits as working for a company and make a lot more money.
You can, and you also get to buy them a la carte and buy what you want specifically through our system, and that makes it really, really unique.
Right, because by your example, that's a delta of about 30,000, and if you have like an a la carte suite, as you said, with probably some sort of savings, spending quite less than that delta provides you, taking home more and being able to have that nice car and still have a retirement fund.
Well, that's true too, and you'll also be eligible for tax benefits as being an independent business. You will qualify for the QBI tax deduction, which is the qualified business income tax deduction that came a couple years ago.
Ed, you mentioned that there's a third advantage to starting your own company. Could you go into a little bit of what that is?
Yeah, so one of the big issues in forming Hive Nation was to deal with the issue of a former employee who wants to go out on their own, but is afraid of feeling isolated and
right.
losing access to the people who they collaborate with. I have run my own business for over 20 years, and I can relate to that sometimes lonely feeling of being out there on your own. And so Hive Nation really understands this, and the team of Hive Nation has experience in SAP and knows how crucial it is to collaborate amongst each other. And that's why they've created the community. So as an independent business, you still have access to all those collaborations and your contacts within the Hive Nation system. So it's really an excellent system.
Yeah, I guess that's something that sometimes people don't think about when they're just thinking about a higher rate, going independent, and then it happens, and then you realize you're not going into work every day with your buddies. That you're alone and you're doing this on your own, or you're joining a new company or new project and having to adjust to that culture every time. So you're absolutely right. It can be very isolating, and having a community of support, outside of just what typical SAP communities provide, which are just really that technical support. But outside of that, having a place to go with kindred spirits of SAP consultants who are specifically independent and need to meet up sometimes, and you can find, who's in your city who would like to grab a beer after work. That's super important. That a lot of times gets overlooked.
It's really a big deal. And, these days, a lot of people use all various forms of social media to interact that way. And Hive Nation is addressing that as well. But what's unique about Hive is, this is a very targeted SAP community. And I think that you can really dive down into specifics with people to collaborate on project-related questions you might have and just general support. So very unique in that regard.
So for people wanting to start venturing out on their own and leaving their company, there are a few different ways to go about it, right? A lot of people try to go the 1099 route, claiming that it's somewhat easier, simpler to get started. But here in this show, we're actually urging people to start their own business entity. And Hive Nation actually doesn't even accept 1099s. Can you explain the difference between the two and why it is so important to start your own business instead of claim a 1099 status?
Sure. This is a major issue. Independent contractor regulation is something that is a top of mind issue in the labor market in general, and is a problem in many areas of the labor market. In my view, the single most important thing you can do for your career as an independent professional is to formalize the way you provide your services to your customers. And the reasoning for that is that there are significant financial risks that you take on as an independent business that you do not have as an employee of a company. And many independent workers tend to discount those risks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that what people have to remember is that you're providing highly technical services to your customers on very valuable systems. As an employee of a consulting firm, you have tools and insurance to cover you in the event of a problem. As a 1099 who doesn't have business insurance, you don't have those coverages and you don't have that protection.
So they're left exposed legally and financially.
Sure. So if something goes wrong on a project, for example, even something that may or may not directly be your fault, the customer is going to treat you like any other large consulting business or staffing firm. And that means you're exposing yourself personally to lawsuits or financial damages or both.
Mm-hmm. And they can start going after personal assets as well.
That's right. So that car that you mentioned is at risk.
There goes the Lambo.
That's right.
Wow. This is still a popular option for a lot of consultants. Why haven't people really switched over to becoming a business entity? Why are people leaving themselves exposed?
Well, they are switching over, and they're doing it in a mass way. I have run ACS for 20 years. In the first 5 years, from 2000 to 2005, there was a lot of independent contractors, sole proprietors who had left their companies and wanted to form their own, provide services as a 1099. That era is over, more or less. In the last 5 to 10 years, very few of the people that we engage are 1099s. They've almost exclusively all formed some business form, meaning LLC, S corporation, or what have you, to protect themselves from these risks that I'm describing.
In addition to protection, would you say it's also because a lot of businesses are looking to hire more business entities and no longer, with new state law changes, as I mentioned earlier, like in California, 2020, we now have the ABC test, which basically dictates you can't hire any more independent contractors, or it's very difficult to hire independent contractors that are actually coming on board full-time to a project. You really now have to prove that their work is specialized enough to be deemed an actual independent contractor under the 3 rules, A, B, and C, that you have to pass. So just with business opportunities alone, would that be another factor as well?
It is a really crucial factor, and the independent contractor regulatory regime across the country is a patchwork of overlapping and often confusing and sometimes conflicting laws. California has its own set of laws that are also unique compared to the rest of the states. The federal government has their own tests. Many state governments have their own tests. And then there are sub-tests for specific issues like wage hour, unemployment, taxes, safety, equal employment opportunity, and the list goes on and on. So because of that, particularly in a multi-state environment, companies are increasingly resistant to engaging sole proprietors who don't have insurance. Being incorporated and is not in and of itself a complete bar to being considered an independent contractor. It is a huge step, however, in the right direction of a SAP developer putting themselves out to the marketplace as an independent business.
Can you go into a little bit more detail as to why Hive Nation just will not engage with 1099s at all?
There are many tools that companies have that analyze this issue of independent contractor status. But all of those tools are designed to protect the customer, not to protect you, the worker. So that has been a major concern for us. We feel that there's a gap in the guidance on this issue because all of these products are designed to benefit and protect the buyer of staffing SAP services, not the seller. And we want our members to be protected. We require our members to carry business insurance for that same reason, to be protected. Our business is designed to provide our members all the tools they need to operate as a real independent business.
So going in from 1099 to an LLC or S Corp is really just beneficial for everyone around. Employers, you gain more employment. Businesses tend to move in this direction, and businesses don't have to worry about getting sued for employment wages, down the line. As I'm hearing, what's starting to happen is that, these factored rules across the states that you had mentioned are vary from state to state of what actually constitutes being an independent contractor. They're not actually enforced until someone is filing a claim. So they're just kind of always liable or on the hook, even down the line, if they do accidentally hire a 1099 that doesn't meet that criteria.
That's right. And there are activist states and agencies that can see through the tax payment system how 1099s are distributed. And that will trigger audits. And that has been one of the main issues of triggering audits. When you don't have a 1099 involved in the accounting system, then it tends to lower that by definition.
Oh, wow. Just the thought of an audit
right.
makes me nervous. Just talking about it makes me nervous.
Yeah, it is a colossal waste of your time, and it is a waste of customers' time as well. I mean, the people who are buying your services are going to be naturally more resistant to engaging you if you are not a business, because they're going to have to go through all of these processes to determine whether they can engage you. And
right.
In the absence of that, if you do have a company, then it makes things much easier and quicker for them to engage you.
So which business entity would you suggest that SAP consultants create? We talked about LLC versus S Corp. Does one or the other lend itself to being more beneficial?
So, yeah, I want to start with just saying that I would refer our members to an attorney and an accountant prior to making any decisions as to what status they choose. Hive Nation provides discounted access to company formation tools and accounting support, so that can be done pretty efficiently. Generally, individuals will form a limited liability company to separate their personal assets from their business assets. In some limited cases, S corporations will be a better alternative, particularly if you have employees, though they are more cumbersome and can be more expensive to manage. On the ECS side of what I do, most of the personnel who we engage are LLCs.
Okay. So, what would be the advantage of becoming an S Corp? Would you say just because if people have employees that in their business, that would be the only reason to go that route? Okay.
So if you are issuing stock and you plan to do it in a formal way, then S corporation is the way to do things. LLCs are formed through membership interest, and they are much more flexible and easier to deal with from a regulatory standpoint.
Okay, I see. And what's the step-by-step process to creating their business? If I wanted to go out today, what's the first thing that I would do to get this process rolling?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is to connect with our LegalZoom partner. They have access to all the tools for formation. They also have lawyers that you can speak to directly, which I think is an excellent way to do things. Once you connect with them, then you'll select your company form based on a conversation or research on the website. You'll reserve your company name, and then you'll receive a federal tax ID and state confirmation that you've been formed. The packages through LegalZoom will include filing of articles of incorporation, operating agreement, your EIN, and any licensing and permitting research if necessary. They have standardized fees, but each state has their own fees as well.
How much does this cost? Do I need to save up, a year for this? What type of costs are we looking at here?
No, it's a really good deal, and our discounting is excellent. There's 3 tiers for doing processing, and they're really based on how quickly you need to turn the company around to get set up. The economy cost is 30-day business turnaround, and it's $278.
Oh, wow.
Which isn't bad. Yeah. The standard, which is a 15-day business turnaround, is $528, and the gold standard is 10 business days, which is $548.
It's pretty good, not bad. So, for consultants looking to save slightly more money as a 1099, could you go into why that could possibly end up costing you millions in the long run? And, spending this extra $300 to $600 plus some of the state fees would be worth it.
I have two responses to that. The first is you have to invest in yourself if you're planning to be an independent worker. It's a few dollars to get yourself set up and protected is a really great investment in yourself. You're protecting yourself and you're strengthening your profile with companies that want to engage business-to-business transactions rather than working with 1099s. You will undoubtedly lose opportunities that you would otherwise have gotten by being a company with business insurance as opposed to being an uninsured 1099.
Gotcha. And do you have any examples of how individuals have maybe gambled by going the 1099 route instead of
yes,
securing liability for themselves?
Unfortunately, yes. And I've seen some rather gruesome results of things over the years with some independent contractors who did not incorporate and insure. And this was I believe it was 2004, but we had an individual who was a sole proprietor who had caused some pretty serious financial damage to a server in the neighborhood of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he was sued. And
oh no,
it was a very ugly situation. Had he been incorporated in some form, and had he had professional liability coverage, he would have been completely protected, but he was not. And he was personally exposed. All of his assets were personally exposed. It was a very ugly situation. And so that is, one of the major reasons why I think it's so crucial. If you're going to join Hive Nation and do a lot of consulting work through the system, getting formalized is just the right way to go.
Wow. I can't believe that, because as you were talking about earlier, you could go 20 years without incident, but it only takes one to lose everything.
It's true. It really is a gambling thing if you choose to do that. But I think the other important point is really the loss of revenue opportunities that is going to increase, and I believe in the next 10 years get worse. At the end of the day, companies want to engage you like you're any other business, and they want you to be insured, and they don't want tax problems that are going to be tied to them. They want a very clean business-to-business relationship with you as they do with any other vendor that they engage.
So are there any parting words for consultants as they start to venture out and form their own business?
One of the big parts of this is what we haven't really discussed is how the numbers express themselves through the Hive Nation system. If we go back to our example of the worker who makes $80 per hour as an employee of a consulting firm, that translates to something around $200 an hour billing rate to a customer. And who takes that differential? That's your employer. So they retain a tremendous amount of the product of your labor. The Hive Nation system was built to address those economics. And through the system, you will be increasing your net compensation while we are simultaneously lowering costs to customers who want to buy your services. And that's a disruptive technology, and it will bring customers to the Hive Nation to look for you.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate the last piece of advice about what's kind of always important to all of us, right? Is so how much money am I making? How much money am I saving? Let's get to the bottom dollar here. And that's a huge rate, differential, as you mentioned. For the same amount of work, that's a huge cost that you're saving and pocketing. And, I know we spoke a lot today And we've kind of sped through how the first steps, how you're able to get started in forming your own entity. But what we can do at Hive Nation is walk you through this process. If you get a hold of one of our team members, join our Hive Nation community, join our membership at hivenation.com. One of us, either myself or even Ed here, will walk you through this process and get you all set up. We're really here to help you increase your career and financial goals. So, Ed, thank you so much for joining us today and explaining the breakdown of why forming a business entity is important and why 1099s are going to actually, in time, just lose out, both from a revenue standpoint, as you had mentioned, and in risk and liability. We all want to keep our Lambos, so.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jade. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been super educational on keeping up to date with all the legal changes and how to form a business entity. So again, join us on our website. We will go through step by step how to get you started if you're not already up and running. And for those who are already up and running, please check back with us to figure out if there are some costs that we can help you save on some of the benefits and services we provide through our site. Our next show will be announced on both our site, hivenation.com, and in our Hive Nation community app. Download the app today to stay up to date with the latest SAP trends, learn new practical solutions, and network with SAP experts. Feel free to send us any questions or requests to community@hivenation.com. Until next time, this is Jade with Hive Nation, the platform built for SAP consultants by consultants.